Hello, my name is Yuri Rashkin, and you are watching lecture number 1 in your public speaking course, Speaking in Public. Today we're going to cover several exciting things. We're going to talk about the power of public speaking. We're going to talk about the tradition of public speaking. We're going to talk about similarities and differences between public speaking and the conversation. We're going to talk about nervousness and anxiety and how to deal with those things. And we're going to talk about an interesting concept of ethnocentrism. So let's get started. So many people are so terrified of this simple activity. You are not lifting heavy things. You are not doing anything physically exhausting. Well, maybe a little bit, but as long as you remember to breathe, you should be okay, right? And yet, so many people, by any study, vast majority of population, would prefer any number of terrible things rather than speaking in public. In the past, I've had students who were great football players who would rather run through a brick wall than give a speech. I guess there's a certain amount of power or superpower in being able to give a speech, to give a presentation, to communicate with a group of other individuals. Wow. So just imagine, what would you do if you were great at public speaking? How would that change you? Something to consider is that if you are a specialist in this world and you are a prized possession, but if you are a specialist and you can communicate well with others, you're going to be doubly prized possession, if you know what I'm saying, and if you know what I mean. Therefore, you want to be somebody who is good at what they do, and you also want to be able to communicate, because again, studies show those are the people that make more money than people who just do what they do well. So why not add this little interesting piece of public speaking to your toolbox to make you irresistible and unstoppable as you go forward, because you're going to be good at what you do from the education you're receiving, and you're going to be good at communication because of the information you will get from this class. When it comes to public speaking and conversation, imagine a Venn diagram where you have, remember, the two circles and kind of to what extent they overlap. There is a certain amount of overlap between public speaking and conversation. What is it? Well, check it out. There's some similarities and there's differences. First, we're going to look at similarities. We want to organize our thoughts logically. We have either way, whether we're having a conversation or whether we're having a whether we're giving a speech, we need to know what we're talking about, what's going to be covered in this conversation, what are we going to be talking about, what are we not going to be talking about. Tailoring our message to our audience. If we're speaking to a group of senior citizens or if we're speaking to a group of kindergartners, those are big differences, right? Or maybe not so much. Okay, imagine we're speaking to a group of engineers versus a group of doctors. Anyway, you get my point. Telling a story for maximum impact. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We humans really like stories. So if you want something memorable, tell a story. And this class is going to really ask you to think of a lot of stories from your own life and stories that you can describe and put into words for us right here. And that's one of the similarities between a conversation and a speech. Either way, a good conversation or a good speech is going to have a good story in it, right? Some of the best people to have conversation with are people who tell good stories. Interesting. Whether we're dealing with a speech or whether we're dealing with a conversation, we need to adapt to listener feedback. If we're speaking to grandma and grandma fell asleep, that's a sign that we need to stop speaking and slowly back away. However, if we are speaking in class, you, me, any one of us, and we look out there and we see that there's all these people on their cell phones, as we're giving a speech, as we're giving this presentation, we know we need to do something different because otherwise things are just not working, right? So that's the feedback, whether we're having a conversation or giving a speech. And finally, it's about talking. We are using words. This is verbal communication. So no matter what you do, you're opening your mouth. There are differences as well. Public speaking is much more structured. Well, you're going to have time limits, you're going to have topic, you're going to have certain guidelines that you have to meet. Can you imagine how long people work on their TED Talks before they actually present them? There are stories of people working for months and months polishing their TED Talk. You wouldn't do that with a conversation. Public speaking requires more formal language. We want to get rid of course, verbal fillers, but also we want to kind of upgrade our vocabulary to the best of our ability, and we want to use better language and appeal to our better selves versus using a jargon or slang. Public speaking requires a different method of delivery, from your tone of voice to your body language to your eye contact. Everything is a little bit different when giving a speech versus having a conversation. You want to have bigger gestures in a speech. It doesn't really matter if you have bigger gestures in a conversation, or it matters, but not quite so much. And that takes us to nervousness. How do we overcome nervousness? And it's a fundamental question because that presumes that nervousness is always going to be there. As long as we're alive, there's going to be things that are going to make us nervous. If we accept that, now what do? We acquire speaking experience, and we do it over and over and over and over. No matter what activity, you know, if you're going to do it over and over and over, you're going to stop being nervous because you're going to do it again and again and again. It's just nervousness is you're going to overcome that nervousness. Imagine whether it is playing a sport and going on the field for the first time versus doing it for many years, week after week after week after week, you stop being nervous, right? Or if you're a young driver or you're going just on a road that you're not familiar with. And on this road, and the first time, you're really nervous. But then you kind of go less and less nervous. Sometimes it's not a good thing because there's deer out there. But just, we get less nervous. And that's the key here for this conversation. Okay, so acquire speaking experience. That means that if you want to get better at public speaking, practice public speaking. That means looking for opportunities and not running away from them, because actually doing it is going to make you better. Okay. Prepare. No, it's not going to save you. We can still be nervous, but it's going to make us less nervous if we know that we are prepared, that we know that we have a great outline that we feel good about, that we have a PowerPoint that works, that we practiced, we've done all of this. Prepare. It's going to make things easier. Now, by the way, if you get to the point and you are just like, and you freeze up, right, completely. Take a drink, because that's actually total power move. It's amazing how it sends a message that we are totally in control, so in control that we can just be like, hang on a second, right? And what that does, it actually buys us time. And if you're prepared, then that information is going to come back. You know how otherwise you're going to sit down and you're going to be like, I should have remembered this. If you just take a drink of water, chances are quite good that if you're prepared, this information is going to come back to you. Right? Now, beware that there are many different reasons and ways to address nervousness. In this situation, I'm trying to give a few reasons and suggest that one of these may work for you. So as we go through these, think about you and think about, is this something that helps you? But I think preparing is almost universally a good way to decrease nervousness. Do you disagree? Leave a comment. Think positively. Things can go well. We have this powerful engine in our brain that says, what if things go wrong? What if I forget this? What if I drop? Okay, but think positively. What if something goes well? What if you inspire someone to change their major because of your speech? It could happen. And then use the power of visualization. Imagine things going well, know that most nervousness is not visible. This is extremely important to understand. No matter what we feel on the inside, if we have a smile on our face And the further we stand from camera, the more we can fake I don't know, can you fake a smile? Probably can. But at least we got to know that when we are when we are displaying signs of confidence, people are less likely to think that we are nervous. And in fact, they are much less likely to think that we are nervous. So, no, that most nervousness is not visible. I've known some musicians, because in my musical past, where I knew this guy who was a guitar player, he was a jazz guitar player, he would go this and do these great scales, and then he would go, I can't believe I just made this mistake. And I'm going, whoa, I had no idea, but now I do. Thank you very much. So don't do that. If you can manage to smile, we will not know that you're nervous. And if you tell us, I'm so sorry, then you are letting this information out. Now we know we don't like it, makes us feel uncomfortable. It's awkward. Let's not go there, right? So just don't show that you're nervous. We're going to show smiles. It's going to be self-reinforcing. We're all going to feel great. It's going to be awesome. Next point, and the final point on this slide. No, do not expect perfection. Folks, perfection, nobody walks on water. Nobody is going to get things perfectly. It's a very subjective art form. Public speaking is what I would say. And therefore, no one in this class is going to get 100% on their speech. That's okay. You can still get 99%, but don't think that 100% is possible. I want to get that off the table right away. And you shouldn't expect perfection in your speech. You should know that you should have an introduction, body, and conclusion, that you should have sources, and that you should have a visual aid, that you should speak about something that you're passionate about and knowledgeable about. Those are kinds of things I'm looking for. And if you have them, then you're going to do great. And I think that in a lot of situations, people are going to give you a lot of credit for just being up there and speaking in the first place, because we all know individually, personally, also personally, how terrifying it is to speak out in public. And so we give somebody who is not afraid of doing that a certain amount of credit, quite a bit of credit. So again, you're not going to do poorly, but you're not going to don't expect perfection. How to be less anxious. Boy, are there a lot of resources for you on that? There are TED Talks after TED. Why? Guess what? Because this is a common problem. And not just because it afflicts a lot of people and they're like, oh, I can't do this. No, it's because they have to do it and they can't figure out how. So, of course, when we need to learn something, what do? We go to YouTube. And there are channels. Always. There's channels that are dedicated to nothing but helping you become better at public speaking. We're going to look at some of the videos throughout. But TED Talks are just a great starting place to look at a lot of different people who are giving their TED Talks and giving their ideas. Some of the ones that I have linked here is, let's take a look. Kelly McGonigal, How to Make Stress Your Friend. I believe this was viewed in class, and you will Kelly McGonigal, How to Make Stress Your Friend. If you haven't seen it in class, then I highly suggest checking it out. It really helps reframe the whole conversation of what is stress, how bad it is for you or not, and really helps, I think, with nervousness. Or a different approach, Megan Washington, Why I Live in Mortal Dread of Public Speaking. She is some kind of a rock star in Australia, wherever that is, and what she does is she stutters. And she stutters quite extensively, and she talks about meeting another stutterer who thought that she was making fun of him because they both are stuttering. So it's, a lot of awkwardness and so on. And then she said that she discovered that when she sings, then that really helps with alleviating stuttering. So what she does at this point is she sits down and she sings an absolutely beautiful song. Oh my gosh, I just gave away the punchline. Never mind. You should still see it because it's awesome. It's a beautiful thing. It will touch you right on whichever the left side for you is, because the heart is on the left. For me, it's right here. Let's take a look at the entire speech communication process. It consists of situation, speaker, channel, interference, message, and feedback. To take it apart a little bit more, let's unpack this. Situation is where it is that we're speaking. Are we speaking at a funeral? Are we at a wedding, in church, at a hospital, at work? What's going on? Speaker, why that would be you. Channel would be, are we speaking out in public in person? Are we speaking via computer, via phone, via, how are we communicating with folks here? Interference is the most interesting concept that we should be aware of, because it can be a loud piece of machinery making noise, but it can also be the fact that you, as a listener, need to go and eat, to the bathroom, to go do your homework, run to work, doctor's appointment, something going on at home. All of these ideas are interference. And we should be aware that our audience is thinking all of those things while we are speaking, and that while we are listening to somebody, our mind drifts off to all these other things, and we need to try to keep focused on the topic at hand, which is the message. So we need message, what it is, the information that we're looking to deliver. And finally, feedback. What is it that's coming back to us from the audience? We live in a multicultural world, and we need to know that there are different cultures that we are addressing with their own expectations. So if we're speaking in a culture where people don't smile as much as they do in America, then we may look strange. People may look at us and go, what's wrong with him or her? Why are they smiling all the time? Are they crazy? What's there to smile about? We're a bunch of serious people. We don't talk like this. On the other hand, if you are coming from a culture where people are not smiling, but now you're in America where people are smiling all the time, everything's great, let me show you all my teeth, I have a wonderful dentist, whatever, then you need to smile, otherwise we're going to judge you as being maybe not confident because you're not smiling. But it's actually, there's a name for it, and the name is ethnocentrism, which is judging another culture solely by the value and standards of one's own culture. Ethnocentric individuals judge other groups relative to their own ethnic group or culture, especially with concern for language, behavior, customs, and religion. So be aware, don't be ethnocentric. Honestly, I think the best way to avoid being ethnocentric is to travel, which is a cure for several social ills. Travel as much as you can. And consider, when you're listening to a speaker, that they might be from a different culture with different standards. And a communication tip before we are done. Eye contact. How should you use it? What does it do? How should you use it? I look at my audience. I start at one corner and I work my way around to the other corner by very slowly, because I make eye contact with each audience member in my classroom, and once they look at me and I log in eyes, I immediately shift to the next person. So I don't look at anybody for too long, but as soon as I make eye contact, I go into the next person. Once I make it all the way to the other side of the room, I just go back and start again. I call it the sprinkler method. And what does it do? It allows us to stay engaged with our audience. Because if we are not looking our audience in the eye, if we're not looking at them, they're going to kind of move away, because, as I was saying, there's a lot of interference that we're all encountering, and we need to just accept it. And that's one of the ways of dealing with this interference, cutting through the interference, whether we're having a conversation or giving a speech, is eye contact.